I'm here today with Ed Silva, but before we start, I want to kind of disclose. There's no disclaimer there. He's going to put up a disclaimer. Anyway, I want to tell you about the show in case you haven't been watching. Gloves Off is every Thursday at 4 to 5, and who we have come on is either politicians, ex-politicians, or nonprofits. Once a month, I will be discussing Palmetto Bay because that's close to my heart. And most likely, the individual who will be discussing Palmetto Bay with me is Mr. Ed Silva. How you doing?
Good, David. How have you been?
I've been great.
I'm glad to see that you ironed your shirt today.
Yeah, that's because I'm made to. Hold on, wait. Let me close this little button here so, I even look more formal. What's today's date? The 28th?
The 27th, no?
28th.
The
28th.
Are you gonna read
We have a lot to talk about, actually. What?
Are you going to read the disclaimer?
Oh, there's the disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed here are those of the host and the guest, and not necessarily those of community newspapers. So there's my disclaimer. Couple things. Number one is if you have any questions for either Ed or I, please type away. And hopefully in the near future, I will have a telephone here. So if you want to call, I'll pick up the phone and I will answer your question. It's all a matter of time before Michael Miller gets me a phone and I can start answering live questions. So today we're going to start out with a little football. There is a pretty good analogy that politics is kind of like sports, right? And you have two opposite sides. They don't necessarily get along with each other. And when you're the manager, you pretty much hire, fire, trade individuals that are playing football with you. Today we're going to talk about Palmetto Bay
I really don't like
politics as if
wow.
it was a sporting event, because it's damn close if you want to know the truth. I'm going to ask Mr. Silva if he was the coach of Palmetto Bay Council, who would be the first one he fired from the team?
Going down your sporting analogy, the most important person on a football team is the quarterback. The most important person on the council and the one that does all the lead political relations type things is the mayor. So that would be the person that you would replace.
So can you give me any reasons that Karen Cunningham would be your first to be replaced?
Well, no, I'm just using your analogy.
Oh, no. Here we are. We are comparing Palmetto Bay politics with a sporting event. And I got to tell you something. It's definitely a sporting event up in Washington, D.C.
Well,
you have two different teams.
Politics in general, nationally, state, and local have actually become a political zoo. It's political theater. It's more than anything else. I think that honesty has left the room. I think it's left the room on a national stage. I think it's left the room at the village of Palmetto Bay. I can give you a plethora of reasons and things that have been changed. It looks like we're trying to always do revisionist history in Palmetto Bay on things that have happened or haven't happened, and they're always trying to carefully craft the message to make them look in the best light. And I think that started with this recent council and this recent mayor, and it's really accelerated considerably, where it's very, very difficult for the average resident to understand what is truthful, what isn't truthful, who's lying to them, who's not lying to them, and which way is really up. I think it's completely lost in the village.
Well, I know. We've been talking about transparency for years now, and I hate the transparency in Palmetto Bay. There's absolutely none right now. I have to disagree with you, though. She would not be the first person. She would not be the first one I would fire. The first one I would fire would be Marsha Manson. And there's reasons for that. She's been on the council for 2 years. I watched her in a zoning hearing the other day. She was completely lost. She really doesn't get how politics or how the council works. she's completely confused. It'd be like her looking at a playbook and saying, I don't get it. And I've seen that over and over and over. She might be a nice lady, but she just doesn't get the way things are passed and the way it works in politics. So it wouldn't be Karen. And I can tell you something, even though I truly believe that Karen does stuff behind the scenes that she should not be doing, I would still say I would keep Karen and get rid of Marsha Matson.
And I can understand that, but I'm just thinking that you always start at the head and you work your way down. I'll tell you, let's go back to that zoning issue you're talking about, which is that piece of land that's near Westminster. I'll give you an example where the truth was twisted there. That council at that hearing made it seem like nobody knew that lake was being filled. And yet I vividly remember being asked to attend a meeting with Mayor Cunningham and a resident sitting there and hearing the guy complain about
the resident that lives behind it, that got the retaining wall.
Yep, about the retaining wall. And that was 3-4 years ago. And at that time, it was very clearly said to our mayor that we had nothing in our books to stop us from doing so if Durham didn't stop them. And yet, all of a sudden, it's like amnesia's hit and nobody remembers anything.
Yeah, let's backtrack, because a lot of people who are watching or may watch in the future don't really understand what happened Monday night, which was literally a 2.5-hour circus. You want to set the table, or you want me to set the table?
What it was there was a developer that bought a 5-acre piece of land that's just directly west of the Westminster campus.
Off 152nd.
Off of 152nd Street, east of Old Cutler Road. The developer bought that land from Florida Power and Light as surplus land. He went through the
How long ago? Do you remember how long ago?
4 years ago.
Okay.
2016 maybe.
You got to give him a little flavor, a little detail.
2017 is when it was done. Immediately they started to approach us about the fact that they wanted to fill the lake. We sent them to Durham because we don't have any jurisdictions over any of the wetlands or any of that stuff. That's goes through the county agency of Durham. During that time, one of the residents reached out to us up in arms saying, what's going on here? Now, mind you, that was always...
He was a resident that lives behind,
that lives behind, and a portion of the lake was in his property. And he was complaining, rightfully so, that would be affecting his house. We had a meeting at his house, or at his lot. Then Councilwoman Cunningham, myself, and the homeowner, we discussed what the process was, that it would have to go through Durham. We discussed that we had nothing on our ordinances that would be able to stop it, and what would be the steps that he would have to do to get anywhere. He went through Durham. Durham basically said, we don't see any issues with this. And
okay, well, let's stop you. I'm going to stop you along the way.
That's fine.
Durham went out there and inspected.
That's correct.
Okay, and said there was nothing here except for 2 trees, I think it was, that were worthwhile saving, as far as you know.
As far as I know. Then what happened was that they applied for a land use permit, which gave them the right to fill the lake. And they did so. There was plenty of opportunities for the council and Mayor Cunningham to have stopped it, tried to have stopped it, and none of those opportunities were ever taken. Well,
it's hard. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. It's very, very hard once Durham says it's not environmentally sensitive lands, which they did after they went out there and inspected it, to stop Durham from giving a permit to sit there and fill the lake. Even if we objected, which nobody did, so you don't know what would have happened. Even if we objected, it probably would have turned out the same anyway. But the fact of the matter is, nobody objected at the village at the time that they were getting ready to fill in the lake, and at the time that Durham said it was an environmentally sensitive area.
That's correct. But then and here's the flip side of that. But then also at the visiting session on Tuesday, we have the council talking about buying the 5-acre horse farm on Old Cutler Road. There could have been an ample opportunity for our village to pursue or look at the potential of buying this land and trying to stop it from being developed.
Correct,
that
because
was never done.
There's literally there may be only 2 or 3 pieces of property left in Palmetto Bay, basically, to develop after this One is the horse farm off Old Cutler Road, FP&L property, and I think there's one other one off Old Cutler Road and like 178th, somewhere in that area. But I don't think there's any place else to really develop unless they start talking about developing the 22 acres, which is impossible as far as I'm concerned. Should never happen.
Oh, the 22 acres. Now let's get some
Yeah.
history of the at the Palmetto Bay Village.
Let's
Center,
stop.
which
Let's
is,
let's
But
stay
let's
on.
go back to that. So
let's
anyway,
stay, let's stay on.
so then the developer starts down the process of having the meetings to see what could be developed and what cannot be developed, and they put in an application. I'd say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to try to get development. They've had a series of deferrals. COVID deferred it, so now it came in front of the council on Monday night. And on Monday night, amnesia hit, and a lot of this history seemed to be relevantly new to this council and to this mayor. And all of a sudden, they forgot about everything that had happened and the history on it, and they're trying to revise it to make it seem like they have no idea that any of this has happened. But they were, the members of that council knew.
Well, there's a couple of things. Okay, so it right now it's zoned for environmentally sensitive, which the attorney, rightfully so, came back during that meeting, the 2.5-hour meeting, and said it's not environmentally sensitive. They said it wasn't Durham said it wasn't environmentally sensitive, so it has the wrong zone. It has absolute wrong zoning on it. Yeah, it's okay.
There was two interesting things that came out of Monday that I took out of Monday and listening to the village attorney. The very first one is that the land size is based on gross acreage and not on net acreage. That's setting the boundaries. And this is why I think that's an important statement that was said. Let's go down the road a little bit, down east. You got the Florida Power and Light parcel that's going to be going in front of that council, where they're trying to tie that developer to net land and not gross. And yet here you are, less than a block away, where they're actually saying it's actually the opposite. You base it on gross.
No. They came out. They absolutely came out.
Yeah,
no. They came out absolutely and said the way things have been done, the way things have been zoned in the past, have been done by gross acreage, not net acreage. And probably the people that are watching this have no idea what the difference is. But
the difference is huge, actually.
The gross acreage is done basically taking the road in the consideration,
property lines inclusive of all right-of-ways.
Right-of-ways.
And that's on this piece of land. The net was 4.16, I believe, and the gross is a little bit over 5. So that's about an acre. But on the Florida Power and Light, the difference is about 17 acres of difference between net and gross.
So let's go back to what the village attorney said, because it was very interesting. Unfortunately, he waited until about an hour and a half into the meeting to make his point about the legality of what they were voting on. Number one is they can't stop they cannot reject the zoning from environmentally sensitive, because Durham's come back and said it's not environmentally sensitive. Somebody can build on it. Okay, that's the first one. The second one, he said that if you reduced the zoning, for that piece of property, because you have to look at the surrounding areas, it would be spot zoning. So if everybody's 2 per acre, and I'm just using that as an example, and you sit there and decide to zone that 1 per acre, you're spot zoning, and you're basically going to have litigation with the developer. You have no right to turn it down. And you got to look at trends of development when you're zoning, okay, a piece of property. And maybe you can discuss trends of a development.
Well, the trends of developments that you look at the surrounding lands, and you come up with the average. That's the trend. That's the average trend for the area. So that piece of land should go with that average trend. Now, there's some leeway that you can do in there, but that's basically the rough definition of it. Again, Monday night's important because the village attorney, well, one of the village attorneys, there's quite a few of them, but the one that was speaking on Monday night, discussed the definition of how you look at a zoning based on gross. That's important for the FP&L property. He also discussed the fact that it was not environmentally sensitive lands, according to Durham. Now, that's important for the 22 acres at the Palmetto Bay Village Center, which has always been discussed that they have environmentally sensitive lands, but according to the county, it isn't. So there's two very important things that were admitted to by the village attorney that will affect two huge potential zoning cases that'll be coming down the road and facing this council. And I'm just curious to see if they're going to try to backtrack or change the tune between now and then.
Well, what I found interesting was after an hour and a half or 2 hours of them focusing on the pond that was filled, which actually they got permission to fill the pond, and the trees that were cut down, which they got permission to cut down the trees. And listen, I'd like there to be a lot of pocket parks all over the place if they were free. Okay, I doubt very much that we'd be able to buy the 5 acres. Look what happened when the village bought, 2 acres. We got killed. But the fact of the matter is, he said, if you turn them down for the zoning, and you turn them down for the amount of houses that are permitted or units that are permitted on those 5 acres, you're walking into a lawsuit that the village of Palmetto Bay cannot win. And it took them 2.5 hours, and then they sat there and they delayed the vote for another month. Okay. The only choice that the council has in regards to this 5 acres per law is whether they permit 9 or 10 houses on that parcel. That's the only choice they have. They cannot stop. Okay. And this is not just me saying it. This is the village attorney saying it too. They cannot stop the development of those 5 acres.
Well, the biggest problem that they have is that they have the professional staff, and the professional staff's recommendation
Oh yeah, that's the third thing.
is a third thing.
That's
And
right.
So they need to look at this as judges, and they need to look at the evidence.
We're gonna go through that in a second. This is my
And
issue.
The biggest evidence
Yeah.
that they have against them is their own staff saying that they can do what they are doing and they can move forward, inclusive of their village attorney.
This is my issue with Marsha Matson. Okay, is she's been there 2 years, and maybe people don't realize this, but when you're sitting there talking about zoning, you're basically doing quasi judicial hearing, which means that the way you vote is based on law, not by personal opinion. Personal opinion is not a neighbor walking in there and saying, look, we have too many houses in Palmetto Bay, we don't want 9 more. That is not the way you make a decision in a quasi judicial hearing. Okay. What you have to do is you have to look at the evidence, you have to look at the law, and that's the way you vote, not on personal feelings. Because of personal feelings, I don't want more houses or more cars, but you cannot sit up there as a council person, okay, and not look at the law and what your responsibility is to the law. And that's my problem with some of the dialogue that was going on during that zoning hearing. And by the way, I noticed there was somebody, Eric. Yes, I did. I did. We both got beaten in the November 2020 election, and that's why I got my own talk show. So I'm very happy. Just to let you know, I got no problems with Eric.
I'm glad you made reference to it. I was going to make reference to it.
It's okay. It's all good.
We're still residents, and we still have a right to,
That's right.
to voice our
And
opinions.
you should watch my talk show. I'm on every Thursday from 4 to 5. A lot of people watch it.
So, anyway, this case to me is a litmus test.
Yeah.
It's really going to be a precursor for the other items that are going to be coming in front of this council in terms of the zoning. And I'm going to be very curious to see it. There was, and I don't know if you remember this, I think you were on the council at the time. I worked with the then vice mayor to come up with an ordinance that would allow them and give them some latitude based on traffic to stop some of these developments, which they could have used. It was actually brought to the council, but then the vice mayor withdrew it and never brought it back. And that would have pegged development to traffic east of 77th Avenue. I'm going to have to give you the history of that. Dade County said,
The vice mayor being
John Dubois at the
Thank you.
time, Dade County had said that anything east of 77th Avenue was in what they call the urban infill boundary zone, which means that traffic isn't really looked at. But I had proffered, and Vice Mayor Dubois at the time brought it forth to the council, an ordinance that would ask the county to revert that so that we can look at traffic issues and conditions. But it never got through the council. He pulled it back, and it never came back in front of the council. So they're shooting themselves in their own feet. They're shooting themselves from being able to give them the quivers they need to fight some of these things from happening. And the ones that lose at the end of the day are
the residents. Well, what's interesting is, and I don't think the 22 acres is on our agenda today, but we have an ordinance that says that the 22 acres, or the development by the 22 acres, is based on the parking. I mean, not the parking, but the driving on old Cutler Road.
Yeah, that was something that we added to
Yes.
that approval at that time.
So there was, when they originally, I guess, passed the 484, or they wanted the 484, we got down to 380 because of the traffic, 389 because of the traffic issue.
And again, and we've had this conversation numerous times, and even the 389 is the max. They would have probably been hit down a little bit further than that at the final hearing. But that they have a right to develop. Every landowner has a right to develop. The question is, how can you convince these people to develop in a way that's beneficial to the village and doesn't harm our overall quality of life? And one of the best ways that you can do it on zoning is by pegging it to traffic. And here you are, we had an ordinance that was presented to the council in 2017, I would like to say, that never got anywhere because the council just didn't, the vice mayor at the time withdrew it and never brought it back. And that's something that is repeated constantly with these councils. And they can protect us better, but they just simply haven't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at some of the comments here. I want to say hello to certain people. Kelly, hi. George, how you doing? Look, Miami Community Newspapers actually said say hello to them. So we've gone through the 10 acres. They're going to have to, the 5 acres. They're going to have to sit there, and they will have to approve it. There will be probably 9 homes there. If not, there's going to be litigation, and this is a village of, instead of a village of parks, I've always said this is like a village of litigation. So there's no doubt in my mind that will be approved. Unfortunately for us, it's only 9 houses, and it won't really disrupt traffic that bad. What's going on Old Cutler Road? So land use fiasco on downtown.
Well, that's another one that was repeated over and over again on the revisioning session on Tuesday. And I hate to do this, but I got nothing to lose, so I'm just going to lay it out there. I mean, you hear Councilmember Fiore talking about the fact that this whole downtown thing was something that dropped into his lap his second time around. Not quite true. He was there the first time around when it was being worked on, when there was when there was a task force that was developing this. He was there. The fact that we even added incentives into the code the first time around was because he thought nobody would ever want to invest in that area of our downtown, and he didn't know of any other way to get them to go there unless we did incentives. So it's really interesting to me to see how revisionist history is happening over and over and over again in our village. Councilwoman Marsha Madsen worked in the original charrette for the downtown area that called for, are you ready for this? The community center, exactly where you bought the land.
I didn't buy the land.
Exactly where the council voted
to purchase the land.
To purchase the land is exactly where that charter committee, that charrette looked at for a place for the community center.
And the people on the charrette were Bev Gerald and
all
the group.
Of a sudden,
all of a sudden, because of political reasons.
There you go.
There you go. It's all political game.
That's the whole point. It's all going back to what I said at the beginning. It's political theater. It's not about the residents. It's about political theater and rewarding your friends, but not helping out the village.
So why do you consider it a fiasco? I mean, the fiasco's done right now, right? So you had 3,000 available units that you could build now, or something like that. Now you have 6,500 available units to build. We're at, what are we at? 1,500 right now with the new development going on, maybe 1,200 somewhere in there. So you got a lot more apartments that are going to be developed in that area. I particularly don't think the zoning was done correctly. I think I've said this numerous times. I think townhouses would have been great there. Assisted living facility would have been great there. They just gave no incentives at all to do any of that. Retail would have been great there. No incentives for retail. Basically, what they did was they just took that whole area and they said, okay, we're going to let you guys just build apartments here. I mean, basically, that's what they did, right? I mean, there's nothing in the code for townhouses. There's nothing in the code for assisted living facilities. There's nothing in the code for retail. It's basically a big square area of apartments.
The new code made it even worse, though. The new code basically has gone a step beyond increased density. They're now talking about the fact that they commissioned a traffic study in 2015, maybe, to look at how they can handle the traffic in that area, which is the precursor that the council approved, and that's why Park Drive was born. Now they're talking about forgetting about that traffic study. They want to close down Park Drive, which means their traffic study will no longer work, which means you have a whole lot of landowners that are going to have developments coming in front of this council that will not be able to make their traffic studies work. And it's all going back to a code and a council that simply doesn't understand land use and how it works and how it's all interrelated. It's okay.
No, what's funny is you had two attorneys. You have two attorneys now on the council. Well, one attorney and one used to be an attorney.
They have four, but
okay.
That's, in my opinion, they have
yeah.
four.
Well, actually, you have three too because you have John. Who would be the fourth one?
Well, on the council themselves, they have two. Then you have John.
Yeah.
And then you have the outside.
Yeah. Okay.
Firms.
So we're not going to include him. So anyway, so you have those two attorneys that are sitting there, and they're during the zoning on Monday, and I'll give them. They never. Okay. So these attorneys didn't specialize in zoning, but they were completely lost. They and even when John Della Gloria said something to me, they seemed lost, which is kind of scary. I know that's not their area of expertise, but the questions they were asking, can you put horses on the property? And that was actually a question, by the way. Can you put horses on the property? That's not what is zoning. That's not what you're supposed to be focusing on. You're supposed to be focusing on the law, right? They weren't even focusing on the law, and they're attorneys. So that's what scared the hell out of me watching it. And I sat there and watched it for 3 hours.
You have more patience than I do.
Yeah. I still am very interested in what's going on. So,
I just see the downtown going down a rabbit hole that's not going to be able to be fixed. I see them having issues. Everything that they've been afraid of and everything that they've politicized against a suburban center there is exactly what's going to come home to roost. Not because of the way it was written, but because of the actions that they're doing now. By closing down a reliever road to Frangio Road, you're adding more traffic to Frangio into that whole triangle area. Where do you think those cars are going to try to go now they don't have a reliever road? They're going to go east into our community and actually hurt the people that live in the residential area around that park. What do you think is going to happen with the fact that you're going to have developers that have land that they can't, that has rights to zoning, but you have a
landlocked,
a comprehensive plan that doesn't allow them to do it? That's litigation down the road. They said it on the council. They said it. Vice Mayor Dubois said it. We understand that we're going to have to modify this in the future, but for right now, it sounds great that we're capping the unit counts. But but that's just PR. I mean, they were mentioning they were mentioning the other day that they want to start a PR division. We have, first of all, Palmetto Bay has no money. Okay, let's Palmetto Bay is in terrible financial condition. Okay, when you're sitting there and you have when you're sitting there and you had a deficit last year of what, 800,000? It was 800,000.
800,000, and you're expecting a $2 million deficit this year and a $2 million deficit next year, and you had $11 million in reserves. Now you're down to a $6 million, if my math's correct, a $6 million reserves. We don't have any money. Okay, they were talking about having a PR department to sit there and make themselves look better to the residents of Palmetto Bay. Residents don't want a PR department. Residents want to know the truth and they want transparency. And this is just fundamentally what's been going on in this village for the past 2 years, okay, because it's all pomp and circumstance. Residents like me, I don't want pomp and circumstance. I want to know the truth. I want you to be fiscally conservative, and I want the village to enact some realistic zoning laws, okay, so we're not overbuilt in a DUV area. And they're failing on all 3 accounts.
Yes.
That's it.
I mean, it's easy.
That's my diatribe. I mean, I don't know.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's true. And I'll take it a step further. The one thing that I did hear a little bit of the visioning session, not a lot, but I did hear a head in the background. And one of the things that I consistently heard from the council was, we need to find ways to raise revenues. Now, I don't know
they
about
know.
you,
They know what's coming.
but raising revenues to me means that they're going to
More
have to either
taxes.
raise fees or taxes or walk away from some of their promises. Their promises to make the FP&L franchise fee sunset is something that's going to be, it's on the horizon. It's a year away, and I don't know
How
what
much
they're gonna
money
do.
is that a year? Do you know? Remember?
That's $1 million.
Okay, so that would be another $1 million in a hole.
Okay, now I'll give you another one.
Oh, but they probably wait. First of all, the council voted on sunsetting them,
They did.
the fees, right?
Yep.
So the council can come back and say, "Ha, tricked you. We're not sunsetting the FP&L."
Well, they won't. But they've listen. At least I could say, listen, we ran into issues and we can't do it.
Yeah.
They're going to basically try to figure out a way to cast that blame somewhere else and say it's not our fault that we have to walk away from our promises, but it is their fault.
But it was passed, and Patrick Fiore passed it that said we're sunsetting this FP&L in 2 years.
Mhm.
Okay, I will make you $100 bet as we sit here today that is not sunsetted in 2 years and given and the
No,
residents.
I'll give you another one. The grant for the freebie, which is that golf cart that runs around, whether you like it or don't like it, but the fact that it's there,
Mhm.
the freebie, which is 50% paid for in a grant, it's on the agenda for the next meeting, which is next week. They're getting the last payment of the grant. So in a year, they're either going to have to figure out another way to subsidize
Mhm.
the freebie, or they're going to have to walk away from that as well, because where are they going to get that money?
Well, there's only one person allowed on freebie anyway every day during the COVID. But okay, so let's quantify this. Okay, the freebie, we get $250,000 from the county, or is it the state?
225. It's
Two-
175 for the freebie and 50,000 for the use of a portion of Palmetto Bay Park.
Okay,
as a
so
park and ride.
we'll have to add if the village wants to continue the freebie, they'll have to pick up another
That
$225,000
is correct.
of residents' money
Yep.
for the freebie.
Yep. Mhm.
So and together the freebies 500,000.
It's a 50-50 match, so it's $450,000 a year.
Hey David, how you doing? The freebie is horrible. They don't work on Sundays. That's when most people use it for the parks. Okay. Hey Jill, I don't want any more taxes and getting less services. Well, it looks like that's the way they're heading. Bob Bizzelli, it's not their money to spend. I don't know what to tell you. I was always a fiscally conservative person on the council. I think I voted against the budget maybe 2 years in a row, the last 2 years, because I saw what was coming down the pipe. They apparently don't have any money at home, so they decide to spend money, residents' money. I don't know what to tell you.
Look, I think that the councils mean well. I just think that some of them don't quite understand, and I'll go to your point. Some of them don't quite understand how government works, and there's a must-do list and there's a want-to-do list. One of the things that I heard at the visioning session, again, from your opponent, was that there was lies done during the election season on the fact that they wanted to cut back on police services. No, it wasn't lies. It was true. It was done during the summertime when they were talking about the budget. There was a budget that was put together that would be cutting back police officers. I haven't seen.
Well, they de facto cut back police officers, which residents don't know because they've never hired the two that were on the budget. So residents think that they have the same amount of police officers as they had last year. They don't have that because they're missing 2 officers that as far as I know, they've never filled their spots.
You just stole my thunder.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. So the problem is that Karen Cunningham got her way, right? The expense of the police officers are going to go down because they're not filling in 2 jobs at each police officer about $150,000.
That's correct.
Okay, on the budget. So she's saving $300,000 right there, but she's not doing what the residents want.
Well, there's another one that just that just retired as well. So I'm just wondering how long it's going to take for us to get back to a full force again, so that we can have our regular patrols, so that we can ensure that we keep our community as safe. And look, we have a great police staff. We do wonders with what we have, because our crime rate has consistently been reduced, and they're very, very good at reacting to everything. But we are continuously asking them to do more with less.
Oh no,
And
I think the police officers are top notch.
And there's only so far you can go. And the fact that we haven't hired those positions that I'm aware of, maybe they have, but I think if we would have hired them, we would have had some sort of ceremony, or they would have been trotted out in front of the council in one of the hearings, and we haven't seen that.
Well, it's a great way to circumvent the budget, right? It's a great way to circumvent not only the budget, but what the residents want. And the prime reason that I always say, the prime reason, if you ask the residents why they wanted to incorporate, was because they wanted to be in control of their own police department. So the residents think that we're fully staffed, but we're not actually fully staffed. As far as I know,
and now, if you don't mind, I saw that that Jerry Johnson asked about the BRT versus rail. I don't know how far up that question was. Please, the pros and cons of the BRT and potential light rail scenarios. Wow, it's a long question, Jerry. The one comment that I'll give on that is, it's interesting because our councils historically voted 5-0 that we wanted a continuation of Metro Rail down to Florida City. All of a sudden, this new council has turned their backs on that, basically turned their backs on Commissioner McGee, and basically have embraced BRT.
See, you and I are going to disagree on that too.
I know.
And you know why?
You know what? But hey, we disagree.
Yeah. And you know why we're going to disagree?
Two peas in the pod here.
Is because the BRT can be up and running in 2 years, and it will really relieve some of the stress, hopefully, on the roads. And it's also convertible later on to some on-grade trains.
And I'm aware of that, and I agree with that. But you also understand that the South Corridor really represents about 5 or 6% of the overall capacity that's coming from the south north. To Jerry's point, there has to be a comprehensive study on how we get people to move from south to north, whether it's completing the grid, whether it's looking at other avenues, or inducing our residents to use BRT, rail, or whatever system you may want to use. Whatever it is, there has to be a comprehensive plan, and it just can't be done piecemeal here, piecemeal there, because not one of those components is enough to really make that big of a change. They all are incremental and they help. So they need to be all put together, and we really need to make sure that we dial in as to what the right solutions are to relieve the quality of life. There are communities, as you well know, in our village that suffer. The people can't even get out of their driveway.
Oh, no, I say that all the time. I use that as an example. I watched somebody, and it took them a half an hour to get back their car out. Luckily, it hasn't been going on for the last year. What's interesting is I will have, and everybody should know this, I'm going to have Tim Meerbot on. He's the mayor of Cutler Bay on the program next week. And it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about the BRT.
And I want to get back to the BRT where you and I agree and disagree. BRT is coming because the county has already got the grant. And I'm pretty sure it's coming. But the problem that I have with BRT, the only upgrade that you can do from BRT now will be the light rail on grade. You cannot go from BRT to heavy rail, kind of like Metro Rail
Mhm.
above, because those stations will be built on grade. So either you're going to tell me that we're going to walk away from $300 million of stations in 5-10 years to go heavy rail, or we are resigning ourselves to the fact that we will have a BRT system now, and maybe somewhere down the road,
Light
a
rail
light rail on grade.
I just don't know what there's such a vast differential in the cost. I don't know, honestly, if you get from point A to point B in a faster time period, that's worth the cost than you in a overhead Metro Rail, or it's the exact same. And that's this question I should have asked Alice last week. If it's the same time period to get from A to B, if it's rail on grade, light rail on grade.
Light rail and grade and buses are very similar time frames. There's a difference with heavy rail.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge difference.
Is it a huge difference?
I was part of those. I was part of those advisory groups, so I kind of know this a little bit. So there's a difference. I question how much a full blown BRT system and or a light rail and grade, they both suffer from the same issue. I question how much they're going to affect east-west traffic. Because in a perfect world, when they do their perfect little computer programs and the lights switch perfectly,
well, they're going to have, from I understand, they're going to have.
I understand, and they're triggered
Yes.
so that you don't have those rails coming down. Maybe every 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it's triggered at. But that's if everything's working and syncing perfectly. Once that goes off skew, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems.
Yeah, but you can say that about any technology.
If it's heavy rail, you wouldn't have that issue. You're going straight over it.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't matter.
Listen, you and I are never going to agree with this. What I want is immediate relief for the residents of South Dade, and you would not get the immediate relief if you sat there and you build a Metro Rail system down to Homestead. It's just my opinion. But you know what they say about opinions. So let's talk about insurance rates from state on windstorm.
They're going up about 8% for next year. That's another one. It's not just, most of our residents understand that the most that our property taxes will go up if your homestead is 3%. It's not a major shock to the system.
Mm-hmm.
However, the problem that you've got is it's all incremental. You have 3% potentially coming from the county.
You definitely have an increase in real estate taxes coming next year. There's
may
no
have,
way around this.
That is correct from us, from the village.
Yeah, from the village.
You're going to have your homeowners, all the policies are going to get renewed starting in August are going to go up on average 8%. You're going to have increases to your franchise fees, because I cannot see that the village will walk away from that $1 million paycheck. There's just no way that I can see them doing so. You're potentially going to have other increases from the county side, because the county side is ramping up to do certain things that they're going to need to increase their revenues. And when you start adding them all up, you're making it harder and harder to live in South Florida.
Especially if you're on a fixed income.
Especially if you're on a fixed income. And that's the problem. And yes, it's just a little bit now and a little bit next year and a little bit next year.
But it snowballs.
I'm sorry?
It snowballs. It
snowballs. And you know where it's really going to come home to roost? Down the road in a few years, when you see your property value starting to decline because your tax rate's too high. And the person that's going to come in and buy that house, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. I'm not paying 2.3%, 2.3 mils on my tax rate now. Palmetto Bay is way up here. I can buy across the street relatively.
Okay, so we're gonna have
house.
let's break this down for everybody, because I understand this, but people watching don't break it, may not understand it. So what you're living in right now, you're living in your house that you may have bought 10 years ago that cost $300,000. Okay, when you sell your house, you're going to sell your house say in 2 years, that same $300,000, maybe you're getting $700,000. That means the individual who's buying your house is going to be reassessed at that $700,000. They're not being assessed at your $300,000. They're being assessed at 7.7. So their real estate taxes would basically double, okay, what you're paying for real estate taxes, and the value most likely, okay, it's called inflation, and the value most likely you're not going to get to 700,000 because nobody's going to be able to afford to pay double taxes. And in addition to that, when they go out and buy insurance, the insurance company is going to want insurance placed on a $700,000 value, not a $300,000 value. So basically, what's going on is we're killing ourselves in the future, okay, because of what's occurring right now.
And
did I explain it well?
Yeah,
enough?
no, you probably better than I did.
Okay.
And once you start down that slope, it's almost impossible to reverse. It becomes very, very difficult to stop. And then you couple that with the fact that they can't make up their decisions on what to do with zoning or growth. They're really tying their hands in the future and creating a big mess for our village down the road. My opinion, my opinion.
Well, we all, I read the disclaimer. So Pam Gorman, you're never going to be able to sell your house in the future. I'm glad you did the rehab on it because it looks great.
And I saw a comment up there about I miss it now, something about sidewalks.
Why can't we get an update on the mayor's mega sidewalk? Lisa, I have no idea what's going on with the mega hide. Can I see the hide?
Yeah,
we'd like to see the hide. Come on, we don't know. I got no problem with that. Come on, we're all friends here.
Let it go.
Let it go.
I didn't hide it. I showed it.
Oh.
Read it. It's on the main screen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed. You should have got to go see what you're. I don't know if that would have made the difference.
Let's talk about let's talk about the sidewalks.
A lot of concrete and a lot of green area. I don't like concrete. Not 10 feet concrete anyway.
I really don't see a plan for it. I don't see a plan anywhere for any of these sidewalks, any of these.
Okay, I'm sorry. Grant Miller has basically walked into the room and is giving us
a nice sunrise, a nice moonrise.
a view of something we don't want to see. God love you, Grant.
Yes, there has been some plans that have been unearthed.
Yeah,
that show that there is a lot of sidewalks, wide sidewalks coming to our.
A lot of concrete
that's coming to our community.
Not exactly. A lot of concrete is not exactly environmentally friendly, by the way.
Let's go back to what they love to do in our village and say that we're a suburban community, which we are. Suburban communities and wide sidewalks don't quite seem to gel in my mind.
They don't go hand in hand?
No, I don't think so. Now, a correct, cohesive plan for sidewalks that you may be able to use them as an alternative for golf carts, I can understand in certain areas. But that's not what's being contemplated. They have a haphazard look at it, and they're just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And it's just
nobody I know. Well, put it this way: the majority of people I know do not want 10-foot sidewalks anywhere in front of their house. It's just the way it is.
And
but you can't tell anybody that. There he is, Mr. Grant. So anyway. Let's talk about the.
I just a couple other things. I would like to bring up another thing that I heard in the visioning session, which is a series of pocket parks. That's been on the books. That's been discussed on the council when you were on the council. That we looked at Miami-Dade Water and Sewer's piece of land that's basically off of 160th and 89th. We actually brought a plan forward for under the FP&L guide wires that was never continuously finished. So this is nothing new. They're just rehashing the ideas and trying to see if they gain traction. But the point is, the more that you add on, the more you're going to need to use money to maintain them.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say I'm all for pocket parks, but what's going to happen is basically you're going to lose probably real estate tax dollars, right, from FP&L, and at the same time you're going to have to sit there and pay for maintenance. Now, that's all well and good in a village or a city that has money, okay? But we don't have any money. It's the same idea of a community garden, which they brought up. I mean, they want to sit there and fund a community garden.
Do you know where that's going? Did I tell you?
I have no idea where it's going.
They mentioned that they might put the community garden where the community at your 0.98 acres.
Oh, that's great.
Now it's down to 0.98 acres.
And by the way, they talked about giving a resident a community garden. Can't remember what's his name. Good friend of mine,
Sean Kramer.
Sean Kramer. They mentioned giving Sean Kramer the ability to have a community garden, and they're not even bidding it out or sending it out to see if anybody else wants to do it. How they can directly sit there and give a giveaway to a resident without going through the proper process, I have no idea. Can you explain that? I mean, when have you ever heard of a village or a city giving something to a resident without going through the procedure of either bidding it out or sending out RFPs or anything else? That's just, to me, that's amazing.
I don't.
Are you speechless?
I don't listen. The biggest issue that I've got with that is not the fact that you're giving a giveaway to a person or a group, but what are your safeguards to ensure that it's not going to cost the village money down the road, especially when we're facing a financial crunch as we are right now. There was no safeguards talked about or contemplated. Now that we've brought this up, there might be.
Oh, there absolutely will be, and there should be an RFP.
But
I mean, you automatically should not give this to a resident without doing an RFP because it's going to cost money. There's no way you're going to get around it not costing money unless Sean Kramer wants to go into his pocket and sit there and not pay the liability or if it's in the red. Guarantee that it won't be in the red.
And by the way, I don't think you do or no, I do. I don't have an issue with the community garden. I think it's a great idea. When my son lived in St. Louis, their community on the community's property developed a community garden, and it was an awesome place. But it was their community, their money, their hard work, their maintenance,
and their deficit.
And if it didn't work, it was on them. Now it worked. It was really a nice little thing for their community in St. Louis. But that's something that we as a government shouldn't be playing favorites. We're there to represent everybody.
No, we know Sean backed.
And that land, has got a lot of political history. It's not even real, true history. It's just politically made up history. That land has can either be sold back to the developer, and we all know that. It could be developed for the community center where they spent tens of thousands of dollars in looking into doing a community center. Went out and got a person to do a feasibility study for the community center. We had surveys that showed a substantial amount of residents that wanted a community center. And the discussion, if you remember politically, was if we build a community center, the only people that are going to use it are the apartment dwellers. Remember that?
Yeah.
So now
it's kind of a racist attitude.
It is. But now we're doing a community garden there.
Yeah.
Who's going to use? Will it be the same apartment dwellers that'll be?
I got to tell you, right now with the financial situation that we are in Palmetto Bay, I would vote against a community center. We just don't have the ability to sit there and use residents' money, okay, to anything other than the basics for the village, and that's the problem.
Oh, until they right the ship, they should not be looking at it myself, and I agree with you as well on that. But I will also tell you something that I find very interesting. What's happened to the money for the park impact fees?
I don't know.
Why are you drawing a blank? There's got to be a lot of money there. That every door that was built in our village, every door that's permitted, has to pay a minimum of $800 to $1,600 a door into a park impact fee. There's got to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in that.
I guess we'll have to look at the financials to find out where it's going.
Where are they? Why isn't that being used? Because another thing that they love to say is that we took that the council. Let's say it the right way. They like to say it's me, but the council directed me to take $1 million out of Coral Reef Park to buy the 2 acres that we bought for the community center in downtown. That's not quite true, because here you are with a park impact fee that could easily put that $1 million back in Coral Reef Park, but you don't hear any conversation about that, do you?
Yeah.
In fact, all you see is it looks like the ruins of Pompeii at Coral Reef Park, which is the last little piece of building that's left.
Well, we
at
do have a new
Coral Reef Park.
bridge.
Yeah, which
By the way, there is a ribbon cutting for the bridge this weekend. I think it's Saturday at 10:30. And if you don't know what time it is and you want to be there, log on to the Village of Palmetto Bay website. So what do we got? You want to read some excellent answer? Let's read some of these. Jerry Johnson, any comment as to whether or not any of the current department heads should be asked to succeed elsewhere? I couldn't tell you that. You'd have to talk to the new village manager, who I still think is a great guy. David Perez, are there any revenue streams the council can create aside from taxes? Yeah, you can tax or you can bill more businesses, but we're trying to build the business up in Palmetto Bay, not defer them to or not move them to a different city or village.
and if I can say something to David, yeah, David, there are other revenue streams that we can do. We had an agreement that was approved by the council to put in one of our local restaurants at Coral Reef Park, in where we would share and take a percentage of the gross revenues, which that could have added up to a substantial amount of money. But for whatever reason, that everybody's walked away from that agreement and it's not going forward. So there are other ways that it would not affect you as a resident, that the village could increase their revenue streams. They're just not being looked at.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this all down to something that I've started this week that should put the Miller brothers in a coronary position, but this is my chicken, and every week that I'm talking about politics, I'm going to give out the chicken shit award, which they love, okay? And this week, I'm surprised Michael's not killing me. This week, it's based on a Miami Herald article about the Dade County commissioners all getting 100 vaccines to distribute to whoever they want. Okay? Let me tell you my feelings on giving Miami-Dade commissioners, getting politics involved in giving COVID-19 vaccines to people that gave them a lot of money or giving them out to friends or neighbors or whatever. First of all, you should not get politics involved in giving out vaccines. I think is absolutely horrendous. A matter of fact, 2 people that are on the council or on the commission, let's see if I can find out. I think Danielle Higgins was one of them, and I'm sorry I'm leaving somebody out, but there was another individual who said they should not be doing this, said the same thing, that it's not the place for the commission to giving out vaccines. I apologize. I don't remember this commissioner's name. Every single commissioner should be giving those vaccines back to the hospital that gave it to them, and they should be going to individuals that live in nursing homes and ALFs or people or first responders. There's no way that any commissioner in Miami-Dade County literally should be deciding who gets a vaccine or not. It's not their place. Okay, there are protocols to follow, and that's where the protocols should go. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Anyway,
or at least with the R.
Or at least with the. I haven't gotten my vaccine yet. I doubt any Miami-Dade commissioner will give me one now. Anyway, I want to thank you.
That was fun.
For being on the show. I once again, I'll tell you that you are going to be my guest once a month, so we can talk about all things Palmetto Bay. I'm sorry if I didn't answer or get to anybody's questions. I'm really sorry that I don't have a phone here to pick up where people can ask me questions that are live and I can respond to it. I look forward to seeing you in a month. Next week, don't forget, is Tim Mirbot from the mayor of Cutler Bay to come in, and we'll talk about Cutler Bay. Good night, everybody. Peace. Love you all. Have a good one.